You're looking at the big picture with Edwin Eisendrath on WCPT 820.
Welcome back, everybody. Let's turn to something different than our usual talk about national politics, although we may get there. Alderman Roderick Sawyer is an attorney who served 3 terms in Chicago City Council. During the COVID epidemic, he chaired the city's health committee. No easy lift there. He gave up his seat to run for mayor. And here's the great thing about local elections. You don't have to win to be heard and to make a difference. And Alderman, welcome back. It's a pleasure to have you. We ran into each other at Manny's Deli just before the election. And you told me that you had some things to say, and I am looking forward to hearing them.
Well, Edwin, thank you. And thank you, as always, for allowing me to be on the show. It's always a pleasure, and I always like to talk politics.
Well, first, you and I both have run for office, and not everybody in the world has done that. But it is a remarkable experience to go out and talk to, tens of thousands of people, to hear from them, to see, to walk in their shoes a little bit, to learn about their lives. It is a kind of life-changing thing. So, what did you take from the experience of running for mayor?
Oh, absolutely. It was a phenomenal experience. I wouldn't have traded that for the world. It was, like you said, you got to meet different people in different walks of life in your city where I was born and raised. Yep. But yet, even though you're here all your life, you still don't have always the opportunity to experience all areas of the city. And I got to do that running for mayor, and I got to have great conversations with people. I'm going to tell you, the great part was having the conversation. The frustrating part was trying to explain your vision for the city in 30 seconds in 20, 30 forms throughout the city. Yeah. Challenge. But, to express what your differences are and with the other candidates and why you think that you can be the person that could help lead the city during the trying times that we're having right now. But it was great talking to individuals where you have more time, where you can really sit and just person to person. But obviously you can't do that and win an election by talking one-to-one to every person in the city of Chicago. It just logistically can't happen.
No, it's really hard. And our politics now.
Yeah, but the great part was talking. Yeah.
Yeah. And we haven't figured out yet. Every community wants to hear from every candidate. And so we've put on, I don't know how many forums you did, but it was too many.
30.
Yeah.
Way too many.
Right. 30 times all the candidates show up at a different community in front of a different audience and get asked questions. Right. But there are a lot of candidates. So it becomes really hard to break out, and all the answers have to be short. I think communities have to come up with a better way. This is too hard, really.
I would Emily agree with you, and I would love to be a part of figuring that out, because you cannot really express yourselves in 30-second bits with complex questions. So, some of these questions really need a deeper lift, and you really need to dive into these to really understand, why we're going through what we're going through right now. And a lot of people, and I would include some of the candidates, really don't understand, what the city is going through and how to change it. And I think that's where the disconnect is, where we didn't get a chance to really express true vision for Chicago, as opposed to maybe a few sound bites and a few popular statements that people, think they understand, but they really don't.
Yeah. Well, governing is, I always say politics and governing are related, but they're not the same thing. Right. And we need people who are good at winning elections for sure, but we also need people who are really good at governing, who can help us. And they're not always the same people, but government needs people in it who are really good at the job.
I don't think I was as good as running as I think I am as governing.
Yeah.
So
yeah. You know what? I had the same problem.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's probably why we talk a lot. We get along so well.
Yep.
In that same ilk, if you will. Yeah.
But I think it helps to tell
I'm
people the
always been more
truth.
interested in governing than running. Yeah, I'm much more interested in governing than I was in running.
But some of the ideas that you had, and some of the concerns that you express, and here I'm thinking about things like the fiscal cliffs the city is facing. I think those ideas, while they weren't sort of broadly in the public's mind, I think the other candidates heard them. I think the new mayor isn't pretending it doesn't exist. I think you managed, the people who are doing policy at least learned something from listening to all of this.
I think so. I believe people that are really interested in policy, I think, learned a lot.
Yeah, I mean, and that's part I love about more local than federal elections. You don't have to win to make a difference, to get ideas into the policy world that are going to matter. Yes,
I believe that, and that's the silver lining. And I did not win, obviously, but I think that some of my ideas were heard, and I'm hoping that they will actually be implemented. And I think I had some different perspectives than some of the other candidates by being here and being on the floor for 12 years. And I tell people, in addition to that experience, I've represented aldermen before, and, my dad served for 17 years. Sitting on the side of someone growing up in an automatic family, the combination of those things give me a unique perspective on what goes on and how I think that it should change.
What counsel do you have for the new mayor?
I think Mayor-elect Johnson is a wonderful individual. We've been friends for a long time. If I had any advice for him, again, to, be your own person. Listen to what the concerns of the community are and, take a stand and make your mind up and stick to that, whatever your positions are, and I would say, obviously, listen to, those that have been around, those that can give sage advice, not yes men, but people that can really give you differing opinions on how to get there. How do we get out of the challenges that we have right now? But at the same time, the buck stops with you. You're the mayor. You be that person that cares about everybody in the city of Chicago, and help figure it out. And don't be afraid to listen to good advice. But like I said, at the end of the day, it's your responsibility. It's your task. Stay true to your heart about what goes on, not to other voices, that you may think that got you elected or got you to this point. Do what's right, not what's popular.
That's been a problem sometimes in the past. I think way back to Jane Byrne, who campaigned as a, good government reformer who ended up in the clutches of a guy named Ed Verdoliak, who's not talked about much anymore, but and ended up running a corrupt government and got thrown out pretty quickly. So you do have to be true to yourself and your better angels. Yeah. And that in Chicago is not always easy.
And it's not easy. And it is not easy. But I think that's something that has to be done if we're really going to talk about administrations that care about the city of Chicago, that really care about true change and true transparency. Things have got to change, and you have to be that change agent. You have to be that person.
Yeah. And I don't want to spend too much time talking about Mayor Lightfoot's record for good and ill, but I do think that when you lead a movement, as she did, and as Mayor-elect Johnson did, it's somewhat dangerous that you bring in folks who don't have the experience then to take you where you want to go. Right. So
that's funny about that, and it goes both ways. And I agree with you 100%. But also, you don't want to go too far the other way, because I was talking to a friend a couple of days ago, and they were like, I see an awful lot of daily appointees, coming out, which is, I would say that the benefit of knowledge does have a place here. It's kind of a double-edged sword, if you will.
Yeah, this is the challenge. Getting the balance right is very tough.
You know what I'm saying? I think you get it.
I do. You got to get the balance right. And he's got to bring in the people who will help him, not help him decide right from wrong. That's what he got elected.
Right.
But will help him get stuff done that he wants to get done. Right? Because the agenda facing our city, as facing many cities, is pretty challenging right now. I mean, there's so much that's good and strong to build on. And I actually think our toughest days are actually behind us, and you lived through them. I know we have some money challenges, but I think we're post-COVID coming out. I think we're going to be okay, but it's not going to. It's going to require work. Yeah, it's going to require work.
As long as we don't do anything, crazy with our finances, absolutely. Right. I think we'll be okay if nothing, if we don't just do anything that's spectacularly bad. I think we'll be okay.
Yeah, and we have, a Democratic convention coming to Chicago is going to be a big boost to the city's coffers. I'm not a fan of car racing around the loop. And I don't know if that'll make us any money.
Neither was I.
I hope it will.
I don't. It was very little money as far as I saw.
Oh, yeah.
Generate a great deal, but we got the streets improved around downtown. So
downtown. Yeah. Hey, look, corruption is a nonpartisan activity. Do you have any thoughts on the ComEd 4 verdict?
I respect the verdict. It came through. I think there was more of obviously a precursor to the upcoming Madigan trial, which may or may not take place in a year. So, I think that, and I know all four individuals. Three of them I know extremely well. I didn't know Mr. McCain as well as I knew the others. So I kind of do feel bad. I had good relationships with those individuals, but it was good, fair, and honest relationships that I knew that I had with them. So I had no issues.
I'm so glad you're saying this. It's so important to say if people are going to understand corruption really and what it means, because I don't know if I know two of them well, not four of them well. And like you, I've had good, honest relationships with them. There's never been an issue. And there were people back in Rod Blagojevich's day that I had good, honest relationships with who also ended up on the wrong side of the law. And here's the lesson, and it's such a tough one. If you want to be a player in a state that's corrupt or a system that's corrupt, you have to be triply wary because it tends to catch you. Right, you're swimming in water that's dangerous all the time.
Oh, so well, Edwin, you're absolutely right.
Right, so people, they want to do the thing they're supposed to do, and they just don't see that they're crossing a line, and they cross a line, and and then the jury does what it does. And I don't make any excuses for it. That's not what I'm saying. I just think people don't know how hard it is to be honest in a corrupt system.
Well, let me say this, Edwin. I'm glad you said that because it's really interesting that I have a political name, and there's no secret in that. And I know the individuals that we were just talking about, and I know them as good individuals. I don't have any problem with them, and it's because of what I always tried to do, and it was hard. And I have stories, and my stories will tell you how hard it is to not be involved in trying to be an insider, trying not to be an insider. To the point where I'd never practiced. I'm a lawyer, like you said, Edwin. I've been a lawyer 33 years. I had not practiced one day during the 12 years I've been alderman.
Yep.
And that was intentional because I did not want to get caught up in anything that was,
right,
unsavory or even seemingly unsavory. And I've talked to people about business opportunities, and I thought about them for a minute, and I said, well, what if I did that? And I'll just be overly honest with you. Me, especially being a black man in Chicago, I figured if I did anything that was seemingly untoward, I'm going to jail.
Yep.
If it was just perception of something that was funny, I'm going to be looked at even harsher than some others, especially, having a political name and being around. So I intentionally did not try to do any work while I was in office. Even though I'm legally, allowed to, and it's okay, but I just chose not to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a difficult choice for my family. It's a financial choice that I made.
Yep.
And I said, if I want to serve the public, that I am not going to serve myself at all.
Right. And the guys who, in this case, we're not talking about people who were working in the government. We're talking about people who weren't working in the government. They were, people don't understand that when you have corruption at the top, whether it was, and then we're talking about Democrats here. We're talking about Rod Blagojevich in his day. Mike Madigan's going to get his day in court. But when the top is corrupt, then people around don't know how to do their jobs in a way that doesn't cross lines.
Right.
Yeah. It's why all the people who work for Donald Trump do what they do.
Yeah, and you get approached all the time. Hey, Rod, let's do this together. Seemingly, and it's probably.
Do you have any stories you're willing to share?
You know what? I'll share them with you one day. You and I are talking when we're having some lunch one day.
I have some, too, that have been in the vault for a long time.
Yeah, I got some that I want to keep in the vault for a minute since I've not left office yet. But I have interesting stories about things. Well, I have one that I could tell. One time I was talking to some friends of mine, other fellow lawyers, and this was when I first maybe got into office, maybe a couple of years, talked about maybe getting into the tax appeal business. Mm-hmm. I'm a lawyer. I've done the work before, kind of familiar with it. I talked with a couple of other black lawyer friends of mine that we were thinking about doing it together. And, we had started putting it together, thinking about who we're going to hire and, the work we're going to go after. And I sat there and thought about it for a minute. And this was before all the stuff, escalated with Madigan and Burke and others. And I sat there and contemplated for a minute, and I had to tell them no. I said, I can't do it. I said, it's something about it that if I got involved in this, I would be the target. I would be a target.
You would be.
Not that I was trying to do anything bad. I wasn't trying to do anything untoward, just do some additional work to earn a living. Mm-hmm. But I said something about it it just didn't smell right. It didn't feel right to me. And I just said, you know what, I'll take a pass. And decided not to do it.
Let's talk about one more thing. Chicago is losing its black population. And I grew up in this city. I cannot imagine Chicago without a vibrant, fascinating, contributing black community. It's such an important part of the identity of this city and of the lives of all of us who've lived here. I just can't imagine it. And I'm terrified about the flight from communities, and I'm a white guy who lives on the north side. I just can't imagine what you're thinking about in a community like where you live, where people have been homeowners for a long, long time, and they're getting up in age. Like, what happens when they go? Are people going to come back and buy the houses, and is the community going to revitalize in a new generation? Talk about that.
Well, Edwin, that's something that as, post aldermanic career, I really want to work on. And I think that the thing is, and I know I've been a big proponent of reparations, and it's not really for the money. You always talk about the check that we were supposed to get and we're not getting. I get that, but it's the repair of black lives that I want to be involved with. Mm-hmm. I was watching a movie the other day when Malcolm X and Denzel as playing the character. He said there can be no black-white unity, no black-brown unity until there's black unity. I want to help work on black unity, and part of that is the reparative nature of us and why we're at the top. And I'm talking about black people at every negative category, infant mortality, joblessness, other health disparities, and we're at the bottom of every positive outcome. We have to work on that. And if we work on that for black people, once we get ourselves right, everything else will be better for everybody else. There's that old adage, a rising tide floats all boats. if we can get Black unity together, we can dive into the issues that are affecting us as descendants of enslaved Africans, and why we still have that mantra on us that we think that we're inferior some type of way, and get past that, because that's driving all of these outcomes. That's driving the crime, that's driving the health disparities, that's driving the lack of business opportunities and employment. We have to dig deep inside and have uncomfortable conversations about ourselves so that we can get past that and get moving forward like everyone else, like every other culture, and move forward. And we're not doing that to the degree I think that we can feel that it's urgent. And that's why I talk about reparations, and that's why I've been a big proponent of it on the council floor. It's for a deeper dive into what we need to be doing as, again, descendants of enslaved Africans, and we have to do more to help ourselves so that we can help others.
That's so important and so interesting, and it should be supported by all of us who aren't members of the community, but see it as important to our lives as well.
Everybody can help. Yes.
I remember as clear as can be. I was a little boy, when my father sat me down and explained to me what was going on with the contract sale of houses in Chicago.
Ooh, yeah.
And that was the start of opening my eyes. Because, you're talking about being the descendants of enslaved people. The burden is more current. Is more current. The amount of money taken from Black home buyers in Chicago up through the mid 1960s just was unimaginable.
And when I read the book, and I'm a lawyer. I know about contract sales. I know how devastating they were in the Lawndale area, in the West Side, and other areas, obviously, but they concentrated in that area. And where people can pay 99 out of 100 payments and miss the 100th payment and get their house taken from them.
With no equity.
People just don't understand how that was. How devastating that could be to someone.
Yeah.
You're paying
with no equity at all.
The value of a house that comparable people, down the street were paying a fraction of what you're paying for a house, and you're making less money, but yet you're still persevering. Right.
So the whole Tea Party movement on the right partly came out of people losing their homes when the 2008 financial crisis hit, and that left them still with some of the equity in their house. It wasn't nearly as cruel as the contract sales in Chicago.
No.
Yeah.
And that goes and that travels. Yeah. And that travels to what we're even going to today. I was talking about people, and they were talking about like the youth downtown wilding out and doing other things. And I was like, they're traumatized. And I was like, you know what? I get that. They're traumatized. But you're saying that Black people never experienced trauma before? Black youth have never experienced trauma before?
Yeah.
Have you ever heard
experts
of
at it? Experts at it.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. We've been doing this a long time. It's not our first time being stressed, being traumatized.
Yeah.
So, not to say that they're not. Obviously, I'm not saying that they're not, but.
Nope, but you're saying we got to find better ways to deal with it.
I'm saying there's consequences to actions, and we still have to understand that even after all these decades and many, many years of going through it.
So, Alderman, the night there was this, as you say, wilding in downtown a few weeks ago, it was a beautiful night. The weather was beautiful.
It was wonderful.
And I
beautiful. And like
and I was driving from, I want to say, west of the Loop, like Western Avenue west of the Loop, back into Bucktown. So I drove through a big chunk of the city, including down Division Street, which those of you who don't live in Chicago won't recognize, but it was where the man with a golden arm was written. It was a down and out neighborhood. Now it's filled with people sitting out and enjoying their meals. And I must have seen,
Great movie, by the way. Great movie, by the way.
I must have seen 10,000 people out. They were almost all young, because I had dropped one of my kids off. It was actually, past my bedtime. So outside were just young people, and they were sitting on stairs, sometimes with a guitar and a group of kids, or they were sitting out having dinner, or they were just talking and walking. Thousands and thousands of young people, very diverse. Very diverse. Yeah. This was going on in the same city at the same moment as this nonsense downtown.
Right.
So I think people don't understand how complicated the city is, how complicated these issues are, and also how much good stuff is going on at the same time that we can use to help the healing.
Yeah, I was outside that weekend. It was my birthday weekend. It happened to be my birthday that Wednesday, so I was out that weekend out in my backyard. So I wasn't out downtown, but it was a beautiful day. Chicago is a beautiful town, beautiful city that has a lot to offer, and we should, make sure that everybody could experience that. And I think what we've done, partially especially with our youth, is kind of that we failed them. We don't give them enough activity to let them be children, let them be youth, let them have fun, let them jump around and dance and sing and have a good time and talk to friends or get a little romantic relationship started. Things that we did when we were teenagers. They don't have that. We're always worrying about them. Hey, they need to get a job. They need to get a vocation. Okay, and that's all. And I'm not saying that's not true, but sometimes children just have to wild out and be silly for a little while, and we need to have safe spaces for them to do that.
Because then they can learn to take things down as opposed to take things up.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate your coming on and spending this half hour with me. It's great to catch up, and I'm looking forward to your next act.
Oh, thank you, Edwin, and then let's get together soon and we can talk. We can share some stories together.
I am really looking forward to that. I will be reaching out.
Okay, thank you, sir.
You take care. All right, everybody. That was Alderman Roderick Sawyer, talking about a city he loves and some of the issues we face. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, 773-763-9278, I'll be taking your calls.